Well, folks, it is good to have everybody here for Hawkeye Hangout on this 19th day of October. And do you believe in miracles? That's the, I don't want to call it a facetious theme of our show this evening, but given the opponent on Saturday, I figured it would be appropriate. I don't remember the last time I felt about an Iowa football game, and certainly the line would tell you this. I don't remember the last time I felt like Iowa had less than a 5% chance to win a football game. I just don't. That's insane to think about. I'm trying to think of the toughest games Iowa's had. Of course, Ohio State, when they play Ohio State, they haven't played them since 2017. That's always going to be one of the more difficult games on the schedule, probably the most difficult game when it's on the schedule. But man, biggest line, or I guess Iowa's the biggest underdog since 2000. How about that for a stat? And if you caught any of my kind of lead up to this show earlier in the week, including my preview for Iowa, Ohio State, you would know that I only really see one scenario in which Iowa could somehow have a chance to win this game in the fourth quarter. I really don't. I cannot imagine another scenario. And if you missed the preview, I encourage you to watch that. I thought, I'm not the one coming up with these stats, but I ran through some of the well, I guess I am the one coming up with the stats. I'm not the one creating the stats. Unfortunately, the stats are what the stats are. And a perfect example of Iowa is their passing numbers. And I mean, just the the comparison between C.J. Stroud and Spencer Petras is just unbelievable. And then when you weigh the fact, and somebody brought this to my attention later in the week, Petras has actually thrown more passes than Stroud. Not by much, maybe one or two attempts, but man alive. Stroud's got over 1,700 passing yards. Spencer's, I think, like 929. Not knocking Spencer. It's as I brought out in my segment that I released here this evening on the channel, they got bigger problems than just Spencer Petras, but man alive. And we can see why the Buckeyes are such heavy favorites. All right, here's how tonight's going to go, folks. As always, Hawkeye Hangout is primarily you, the fan, you, the listener, you, the contributor on a Wednesday evening. But we're going to start out a little bit different. We've got a special guest who is on the phone with us now. Coach Don Patterson is going to be with us for the first 20 to 30 minutes of the show. And we're going to kind of spend as much time here in the first 20 minutes of the show breaking this matchup down. And then when Coach Patterson gets off the line, we'll open things up for you, the caller, and you can we can have at it. We'll let you take the show where you want to take the show. But I want to spend the first 20 minutes breaking this matchup down as best we can. Coach Patterson, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Corey. I hope you hear me okay as well.
I can hear you loud and clear, and I believe our listeners can as well. I appreciate you being here. I don't know how you, first of all, what you did during the bye week. You and I haven't talked a whole lot these last few days, but did you enjoy some time off? I know you did have you called the game. Did you call a game this past Saturday? I forgot already.
Yes, we did. We called South Dakota at Illinois State. You're going to laugh, Corey. The final score was 12-10, and as the game wound down, I found myself thinking, this is just like an hour game. Lots of field goals and very few points.
And I do remember you telling me you did enjoy the game, though, so it must not have been too painful. And I'm guessing when you're in the box calling a close game's a close game regardless of the score.
Yeah, very true. I mean, there was a lot of different angles to the game. The strategy was worth discussing. I'll give you a simple example. South Dakota with 6 minutes left. I remember thinking if they play fast on this possession, they can hope to have another possession before the game ends. They didn't. They chose to play at a much more typical pace, which means they burned up about 4 minutes of that clock without scoring. And you know what happened? Of course, Illinois State ran out the clock on them, so they never had that next chance. I did talk to Brock Spack, who was the coach at Illinois State. I said, did it surprise you that South Dakota didn't try to go tempo with their previous possession? And he said, yeah. He said, I'll be honest, I was thinking the same way you were. I was thinking they'd play fast, which would mean they would have not one chance, but two chances. to go ahead. But it didn't work out that way. They chose to use a much more deliberate pace, and I think it was a mistake on their part. But those are some aspects of coaching, of course, that fans don't think about, but you certainly think about them if you spend very much time on the sideline.
Coach, shifting our attention to Iowa, I don't know if you caught my 10-minute preview I released earlier in the week or not, but I'm going to run through some stats, and if you caught this already, forgive me. And, of course, you have a better hold on the numbers behind this matchup than I do anyways, but I'm going to run through some stats and kind of get your thoughts on the game in general. As you know, Don, Ohio State's coming off a game. Of course, they had a bye week this past weekend as well, but they're coming off a game where they totaled 614 yards offensively against Michigan State. And put that in perspective, Iowa has 779 total yards in 3 Big Ten games combined.
Right.
The Ohio State defense held Michigan State, which we typically think to be a pretty high-powered Spartan offense. I know they've taken a step back with the loss of Kenneth Walker, but they held Michigan State to 202 yards total, which is a pretty astounding number when you think about the struggles that Ohio State went through defensively early last year. They also held the Spartans to 7 rushing yards. 7. Now, of course, Michigan State was playing from behind the majority of that game. So 20 attempts total on the ground, 7 of which came from Peyton Thorne. And, of course, sacks are included in that. How about this, Don? Ohio State is the number 2 total offense in the country behind only Tennessee. And they're the number 1 scoring offense in the country. They also have the number 5 total defense, which is technically in front of Iowa at number 7. Now, Iowa has the better scoring D at number 3 compared to number 10 for Ohio State. I do think Iowa's played the tougher schedule, Don. I get your thoughts on that as well. But how about this? C.J. Stroud, over 1,700 yards passing so far. Spencer Petras, 939. Stroud's got a completion percentage of 71%. Petras, 54%. Stroud has thrown for 24 touchdown passes to 3 interceptions. Spencer's thrown for 2 touchdowns, 2, and 3 interceptions.
Right.
Ohio State's top 3 running backs have totaled just short of 1,200 rushing yards. Iowa's top 3 have totaled just over 550 rushing yards. The rushing yards for the Buckeyes from those 3 backs have totaled 13 touchdowns to 5 for Iowa. So I guess you get the point here, Don. How does Iowa win this ballgame?
Well, I jokingly made a comment earlier in the week. I said, here's a way to win the game. Be sure that you're +5 on turnovers. And then I started thinking about it. When's the last time Ohio State was -5 on turnovers? My guess is it might have happened once in the past 2 decades. So that's unrealistic, of course, that you can go +5. +3 would help a lot. +3 is a possibility, not a likelihood. They've proven that they can protect the ball pretty well also. Which simply means we have to do a great job of finding a way to get the ball out. And obviously we have to continue to protect the ball well on offense. So I would simply say it this way. One thing we have to do, we have to shorten this game. We have to make this game as short as possible. And for those blackjack players out there, that's the same advice I would give you if you were going to the casino. What's the best way to play blackjack? I've always advise people that asked, because some people have the mistaken notion that I'm a card counter. I'm not, but I do understand probabilities of blackjack. I've told them, if you're prepared to lose $200, then put $100 on the first hand. Only 100, because you need to be prepared to double down. And for that matter, if you win the first 2 or 3 hands, then you better walk away. That's your best chance to leave with a lot more money than what you came with. The same thing applies to a football game. If you're the underdog, if the other team has better talent, you need to shorten the game, because there is an element of luck in any football game. And obviously, your best chance is to shorten the game and be sure that element of luck maybe carries as much weight as it possibly can.
It's funny you say that, Don, because my preview, I'm assuming you hadn't seen that. I said that the only way Iowa wins this game is if they're at least +3 in turnovers. And I said +4 would be great. Now, I never even entertained the idea of +5. But
yeah,
I think +3 puts you in a position. I mean, I can't imagine Iowa being blown out +3 in turnovers. Can you?
Well, here's the truth. If we adopt a very deliberate pace of play, And I'm talking about, it's the same thing we did when we were at Western Illinois playing against LSU. I told our All-American quarterback, I said, I want the clock to be on either 1 or 2 when you snap the ball. We want to shorten this game as much as we can. And that strategy did work very well. And it'll work well again on Saturday. I would hope that we'll do that over the course of the game. And what that would simply mean, instead of maybe having 12 possessions in a game, maybe you're at least able to cut that from 12 to 10. That just means they get 1 less possession in each of the 2 halves. So that's realistic that you can leave Ohio State with only maybe 10 possessions in the game. And that's strictly because you're trying to shorten the game. Obviously, Ohio State's going to establish some drives, but that's the reality of where we are. I know I talked to Phil just yesterday, and when I was in the office, and I mentioned to Phil, I said, well, this is clearly the ultimate challenge for our defense, because I don't think there is a better offense in college football right now. And it all starts with simply eliminating big plays, being very sound with our tackling, and not letting the ball get on top of our defense. We got to keep those throws underneath us. The way they beat people, of course, is explosive plays. We have to force them to drive the ball 70 or 80 yards. We have to force them to take at least 10 plays to do it, if not 12 or 14. And oftentimes, of course, if you require an offense to snap the ball that many times on any given possession, they'll screw it up with a holding call or a turnover or maybe a missed field goal, and you're able to hold them to a field goal attempt. And in the meantime, of course, the pressure's on them. They're the ones that have to pick up style points. They're the ones that need to win by 28, because that's roughly what the point spread is. Because if they only win by 14, heaven forbid, they might drop 1 place in the polls. And they don't want that to happen. And of course, those fans are showing up with the expectation that they're going to beat us over the head, much as they've beaten other Big Ten teams so far this year.
And I said something similar. I could see a scenario where, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I could foresee a scenario where Iowa, strikes gold and you get 14 points directly off your defense. And then perhaps you have a special teams play or, heck, we've seen Iowa turn, a punt into a field goal. I think, wasn't it the South Dakota State game? Was the one field goal Iowa scored in there? I don't think they gained a first down. The offense didn't. I believe it was like a 5-yard drive and a field goal. So
I think you're right. And for that matter, the first block punt led to a 16-yard drive, touchdown drive.
Yeah. So my point is, I could see a scenario where you literally can create 14 to 17 points. And I think if you do that, I know that's asking a lot, but we've seen the Iowa defense / special teams units do that in the past. I think, maybe it's 17-24 heading into the 4th. And at that point, you never know. I would assume, Don, you would treat this game just like Kirk Ferentz is treating it, and you're going to really emphasize the fact that you're the underdogs. I remember what was it? Now I'm drawing a blank. The kid from South Dakota State. You're going to know who I'm talking about, from Solon.
Yes,
Bach,
the linebacker. I can't remember his name now.
Adam Bach. Yeah. I believe he made a comment prior to the game that, hey, if we're around in the 4th quarter, you kind of become the favorites as the underdog, if that makes sense. You've been in positions like this before, coaching at Western Illinois. How does the game change if the huge underdog like Iowa will be in this game, if they're hanging around late in the 3rd, early 4th? How does that change everything?
Well, I mentioned the other day that when Kirk and I were talking about it, I said their guys are 19, 20, and 21 years old too, and they're no different than ours. They know what the score is supposed to be, and if the score is not that, then they're the ones that feel the pressure as the game winds down. So you're exactly right. We need to just keep it a 1-score game. Of course, it'd be nice if we were playing from in front, but the bottom line, if we're just within a touchdown as the first quarter ends, as the half ends, as the 3rd quarter ends, if it's still a 1-score game, I can promise you there's going to be a lot of anxiety on their bench, because it's not supposed to unfold that way. And at that point, of course, we do have a chance to win the football game, that's for sure. Let me say one thing. Just because I talk about a deliberate attack in terms of the clock does not take the place of aggressive play calling. We still need to play to win the game. We simply need to let the clock be low when we snap the ball. That's all.
And we do that anyways.
We do. The one thing I need to have happen that hasn't happened, of course, is aggressive play calling. We still have to play to win. And the prime example, of course, is the last time we played Ohio State in Ankeny. I remember that very week mentioning that this is 1 week to throw caution to the wind. I think that's the exact term I used, caution to the wind. And Brian, as a play caller, did that. And there's a risk you take there. Of course, yeah, when you run a play action pass, especially if it's on 2nd and 1, you're hoping for a huge play. There's a risk that's involved. They might sack you, of course, but let's face it, they're less likely to sack you on 2nd and 1. They're not in pass rush mode at that point. They're expecting to defend a running play because that's been our tendency, is to run the football and just get the first down. So I'd like to see us use a waist down. I suspect we will.
Hope we use more than one. Don, part of that 2017 game, and maybe part that we tend to forget about, was the performance of Nate Stanley. And look, I mean, they ran the ball well. Certainly the defense, forcing 4 turnovers, one of which was a pick 6, 3 of which came from one cornerback, and that's Josh Jackson. But Nate Stanley played really well in that game in a big moment. And, the iconic play where he's got an Ohio State defensive lineman draped all over him and he just punches the ball to the back of the end zone to TJ Hawkinson. That game kind of lives in Hawkeye fans' minds. How can Spencer Petras channel some of that toughness that he was on that? Well, no, I guess he wouldn't have been. He's 1 year after, but he knows the story and he knew Nate Stanley. How can he channel some of Nate's toughness in a tough environment on Saturday?
Well, you just have to. One thing I always talked about with our guys, they have 100,000 people that are cheering for them. But is there a better feeling in the world than shutting up 100,000 people all at once? And of course, as the visiting team, you have a chance to do that. So I'd like to think that I said, just imagine a little bit that they're all cheering for you. There's a lot of noise when we're on the field. Imagine you're playing in Ankeny and they're all cheering for you. Draw strength from the energy that the crowd has, because who's to say that? Why is it written up somehow that Ohio State's the only one that can draw straight from their fans? Why don't we draw straight from them, just with the mindset that we can shut them all up at one time if we just simply make a big play at that particular moment?
Interesting comment here in the chat, Don, that I want to address. Charles says, and I can't validate this, I'd have to go back and look, but I think he's right on this. He says Brian was coaching from the booth in 2017. He says the only game he was ever in the booth, ironically enough. Well, that's not true. I know he was not. He was in the booth most of 2017 because remember he had the blow up in the Minnesota game up in the press box. But my question is that a coincidence that he seemed to come? Because let's not forget too, Don, a game that people overlook that would be a positive mark for Brian Ferentz's resume would be the Iowa State game that year, where Iowa, I think, hung 44 on Iowa State on the road. Is that something that you think maybe Iowa should consider, is having Brian go back up into the booth?
Well, it's certainly a consideration. Of course, I worked for Coach Fry from the booth all those 21 years, actually, 20 years at Iowa, 1 year at North Texas. But then when I went to Western Illinois, I'd heard for a long time from the players that they wished I could call the game. They knew I was providing Coach Fry with recommendations down after down after down, but they also knew that Coach Fry was the final authority on what play was going to go on the field. And so I'd heard that for a long time, so I was prepared to be the play caller from the sidelines when I was at Western Illinois. And did that, and I think did that very effectively. We had a lot of good offenses. We had some great offenses that we've discussed in the past at different times. Offenses that are similar to what Ohio State is as far as numbers go. I remember we just had a reunion of the 2002 championship team, and the thing that amazed me, we had one returning starter that year, and yet we averaged 36 points a game. That sounds impossible, but it's true. We did. It did help that we had a tight end transfer from Penn State that was an all-conference player and made some All-American teams. But in general, there are a lot of the same players that simply, came back and were ready to assume a starter's role. Prime example is our quarterback. He was the all-conference quarterback, and he was the backup the year before, but he was ready to be the starter. I think he was probably at least in his third year, if not his fourth year, when he played in 02. And my point is it can be done, but it's got to be done with aggressive play calling. It's got to be done with great game planning so that you have any number of ways in which you're going to attack the opponent. And that's the beauty of the off week. We've had more time to prepare for this game than any other. I guess you could argue that we had more time to prepare for game one against South Dakota State. But game one, of course, we didn't know exactly what South Dakota State was going to do defensively. I don't doubt that they gave us a few wrinkles that we had not seen. So we certainly have a good idea of how Ohio State's going to line up against us. And the reason we can predict with good accuracy, they don't have any reason to change because we haven't really scared them into making any radical changes with their defense. And let's face it, their defense has been working well. So the percentages we have on the Ohio State defense should hold up very well, at least until we make them play some other way than what they typically play.
And just going back briefly, one more question on this subject, Don. Going back to the booth question, you've been on both sides of this because you've called games from the booth with Hayden, but you also, you were on the sidelines at Western. How does it change for a play caller when you're up in a booth as opposed to being down on the field? I would I've never coached, but I would just expect it to be easier to be able to strategize during a game because you're able to see the whole field from a booth, correct?
Yeah, it's just not nearly as chaotic as it is on the bench. Here's one thing that I always wondered about. I was calling plays from the sideline at Western Illinois, but I had a great set of eyes in the press box, and that was our offensive coordinator, Mark Hendrickson. Mark and I are talking continually, and I readily acknowledged after any game, a lot of those plays were my idea, but a lot of them were Mark Hendrickson's ideas too, because basically we were collaborating on each and every call, and we didn't even have any issues with any delay in receiving messages because we were on the phones with each other. And of course, we were continuously talking, not just when the offense was on the field, but of course when the defense was out there too.
Okay, let's kind of transition back to this game Saturday. Ohio State, obviously, you look across that offense, and they're legit everywhere. I've never seen. I told Mark Rogers this earlier in the week. I've never seen a team, and I don't watch a ton of SEC football, but I've never seen a team with so much depth at every skill position on the field. And I'm assuming that whoever their backup quarterback is probably would start at almost any other Big Ten school. You look at what Quinn Ewers is doing right now at Texas. I mean, Joe Burrow, we know the story with him, etc. You can just go down the list. There are examples at quarterback. And then a wide receiver, I mean, you got a guy in Marvin Harrison Jr. who's been absolutely unbelievable. Mark Rogers brought this up too. He has single-handedly outscored Iowa in touchdowns, offensive touchdowns. That's just an incredible stat for a wide receiver. And they're maybe the best receiver in the country. Jackson Smith-Njigba has been out. He might play this weekend. He might not. Mayan Williams is a guy people weren't talking about, at least not nationally. Trevion Henderson was kind of the trendy name heading into the year, but both those guys have been sensational. And again, the depth there is what's impressive. What's most impressive about their firepower offensively, Don?
I would just say their capacity for making explosive and super explosive plays. They do that better than anyone. They've had more plays that were 20 yards and more, and for that matter, more plays that are 30 yards and more than any other Big Ten team. And it's been a fairly significant separation from all the other teams. They're clearly, hands down, year in, year out, the best team at making big plays.
And then on the other side of the ball, you mentioned Iowa, the need for Iowa to take shots down the field. And I think you and I probably said the same thing against Michigan in Kinnick, but it seems like you've got more of an attitude even this week that there's no reason not to throw caution to the wind. We didn't really see Iowa take too many shots against Michigan. I'd have to go back. I'm sure you've charted that, but do you expect Brian Ferentz to do that, or will you be I mean, how will you feel if you go through the game on Saturday and they don't take a shot down the field?
I'll be severely disappointed. We have to pick our spots. Obviously, if we drop back 20 times and wait for deep receivers to open up, we're going to get sacked 4 or 5 times. So we got to pick our spots. And again, play action can help a lot. We're back to talking about using a waist down or using a couple of waist downs. That'd be good to see. But I think we just have to, and that's where the film study has hopefully come in, is we found something that's there, and we can know it's there because we have video to prove that it's there, and yet no one has done it to them yet. And that's where your film study comes in. I always describe it as looking for something under rocks. You got to keep turning over the rocks until you find what you're looking for. And it's such a great feeling when you see and you know what cut-ups are. You're talking about the same formation time after time after time. Imagine 20 consecutive snaps of the same formation, and you're looking at them, and you're seeing these same plays that are effective against Ohio State, and yet nobody has run any kind of play action off of that particular running play. There's no better time than now to do it. So, when you see the run, you get a good idea of the reaction that the back end will have, the defensive backs will have, versus that play action. And of course, if you see a real opportunity downfield time after time after time, then you can be thanking your lucky stars that nobody's done it to them yet. I can remember vividly that feeling at different times of the year, and you can't wait, of course, until you can put it on the field and do that thing to them that you're confident you can get done. That's where that film study and that game planning is so critical. You go into the game knowing that it's there, and you can't wait until you have a chance to spring it on them. And of course, you're going to call it at the right time. And a lot of people don't understand this. This is what we refer to as loading up the quarterback. I'll give you a simple example. Maybe we have a play that we identify as a home run play, except I have to tell the quarterback, okay, I'm talking about this being good only against zone. If it's against man, we have to get out. We have to get out of the play because we don't want to waste the play. And honestly, Corey, very rarely do we even have to get out of the play because we usually guessed right. In other words, if it was supposed to be against zone coverage, we called it, and sure enough, we got zone coverage. We called it on the proper down and distance to get the coverage we're looking for. And if we did guess wrong, the quarterback would simply save the play. We're not going to waste it. He would check to another play, and of course, we'd give him some advice on what that alternative play was. And then we might turn right around and call the same play the very next snap, and the next snap we get what we want, and then sure enough we hit it on them, and we don't waste it against the wrong coverage. Hope that makes sense to you. That's kind of a graduate level football, I guess, but that's what we always did, and that's what good teams do. They don't waste plays. They call them at the right time, and if it's not the right time, they save them so that they can use it a little bit later in that same game.
Last thing I want to bring up, Don, and I appreciate you taking the time this evening. Pat Murphy of 247 Sports, he's an Ohio State writer for 247 Sports, chatted with him earlier this week, and he did bring up something that I think is noteworthy. I stand by and I think you kind of agree on this, that Iowa's maybe their only route to winning this game is by being +3, +4 in turnovers. But Pat did bring up something that perhaps could be worthwhile information, and I'm sure Brian Ferentz, Kirk Ferentz, and his staff has seen this on tape. But he did say that they can be vulnerable at times to covering tight ends effectively. I don't know if you've seen that on tape, but certainly the 2017 game was a game of tight end play with TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant each having monster games, being a huge part of that. So this is still the Ryan Day's offense, just like it was in 2017. Albeit he is the head coach now. But has there been a vulnerability to giving up plays to tight ends that you've seen?
No, but I simply haven't studied video like I would, of course, as a coach. So I was aware. Here's another thought. Here's a game that was played in the shoe involving an Iowa tight end, and we were thrilled with Sam Laporta's numbers, 100 yards receiving. Of course, is a great accomplishment. In the Illinois game, he had 100 yards receiving. But think of this. There was a guy named Mark Cook that had 9 catches for 159 yards against Ohio State in the shoe. And as you know, the game winner with 6 seconds left too. So is Sam Laporta capable of that kind of game against Ohio State? I think so. Absolutely. I think Sam can. I'm not saying he can go for 159 yards, but can Sam have a huge game against Ohio State? Yes. And the good news too, we have a guy named Luke Lachey, and I think this game probably means a little bit extra to him. Would it surprise you, Corey, if Luke Lachey didn't have a really productive game as well?
Let's get him involved. That's what I'd say to Brian. You got to get him involved. And frankly, we haven't seen. I'm not saying these guys are ready, but we heard a lot of positive hype about Addison Estringa, freshman tight end. We heard, Iowa brought in a graduate transfer and Steven Stilianos, who has played sparingly, I don't think has been targeted at all year. So I don't think they're too thin at tight end. I hope we see a heavy dose of both Laporta and Lachey. Final question. I told you that was the final question, but I have a question in the chat for you here from Oatmeal for Life.
Okay.
He says, Don, great insight and ideas for progressing the Iowa offense, but one question, what's the upside? And that's sort of a sarcastic question, but I'm just curious, can I get your thoughts real quick on the comments from Brian this past week, Don, because it created a firestorm in the media. He was asked about Alex Padilla and, what would be the downside of going with Alex? And his response was, what would be the upside? You look at the context of those comments, I think Brian perhaps intended to explain that, Alex does have some of the unknown out there that's not been proven. I think I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that that's what he meant, but certainly didn't sound good. Just your reaction to hearing the offensive coordinator saying that.
Well,
about his backup quarterback.
My first reaction when I heard that, I flashed back on something that Coach Fry always said to any new coach he had on his staff. He would simply remind you of this: you build them up, you don't tear them down, and that simply means your players need to realize that you have great confidence in them. You always need to reassure them that all the hard work's going to pay off. You need to remind them that they've been well coached and they understand exactly what to do in any and all situations. You have to show confidence in them. And anything that takes away from your chance to show that kind of confidence, that's a misstep on your part as a coach. And I don't think Brian meant it the way it sounded. It certainly didn't sound good because it sounded as if, is there any reason for us to have confidence in Alex? The suggestion was there is no upside. And that's unfortunate because I don't think that's what Alex deserves. And hopefully it hasn't. If anything, it's just made him more determined to be able to show what he can do if and when he gets that chance.
And Don, one other thing that Brian said that was disturbing to me was he was asked about mobility at the quarterback position, and he kind of fell back on the importance of timing in your progressions and routes and whatnot. And he said, when the timing breaks down, it becomes, and guys start scrambling, it becomes backyard football. And he's used that term before. That
doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be, and I'll give you an example. And it relates actually to a game against Ohio State. Let me take you back to 1985. We're number one. We go over to Ohio State. I think they were ranked 13th. And as you know, they beat us that day. One reason they beat us, we had a couple of flush situations in which Chuck threw the ball downfield and defensive backs from Ohio State undercut our receivers. And the mistake we were making at that point as a coaching staff, our receivers were working in the same direction as the quarterback who was scrambling, except they made the mistake of working parallel to the line of scrimmage. And here's what we learned that day. Never again will we allow our receivers to do that. And from that point forward, Corey, we always coached them. You either come back toward the line of scrimmage, and let's imagine you only need 5 yards for a first down. Well, if you're 12 yards downfield, obviously you got plenty of room to work your way back toward the line. And as a result of that, you keep that defender that's on your backside, you keep him on your backside. He doesn't have a chance to undercut your route. I hope that makes sense to you. Then we went a step further with that. We simply explained it this way. If we're in need of a big play and the quarterback flushes, you still need to work in the direction that the quarterback's working, but now we are both on the same page. We are both looking for a big play. And the way to do that, when you see a quarterback flushing, you work in the direction of the quarterback, but you also work deep downfield. And we had a tight end named Mike Flagg that couldn't outrun any defensive back from Ohio State. And I do remember vividly Mike Flagg caught a ball behind the entire Ohio State defense. And it was simply a flush situation where Mike broke deep downfield and Chuck Long threw it deep downfield. And Mike's waiting for it in the end zone behind the entire secondary. So that's learned behavior. We learned against Ohio State in 1985. No longer will our receivers work parallel to the line of scrimmage. You'll either work back toward the quarterback, which keeps that defender on your backside, prevents any undercut of any route, or especially if you need a big play, you'll be thinking the same way at both quarterback and receiver. You're both thinking, I'm breaking deep downfield. And effectively that becomes a double cut again, right? Because you radically change directions. The DB thought he had a good idea of the direction you were working, but let's face it, his eyes, if he's a zone player, his eyes are on the quarterback, not on you. If he's manned up on you, of course, he might have his eyes on you. But so often, of course, even if he's manned up on you, the tendency, of course, when the play's taking so long, is to figure out where the ball is and to support to the ball and to defend a quarterback that's maybe going to run for yardage rather than throw. So there are big play opportunities, and I respectfully disagree that it doesn't have to turn into backyard football. That's actually coached. That's the way we coached those guys back in 1985 after the Ohio State game. And that's the same way they were coached in 1995. And for that matter, all the way up through 1998, our last year here. We got smarter as coaches that very day. We learned from our mistakes. We were not going to be working parallel and inviting interceptions. We were either going to be coming back to the quarterback or breaking deep downfield. And that's, again, strictly flush situations I'm talking about. And that's part of our problem, of course, is there's that phrase, extend plays. Spencer struggles to extend plays. And I don't think there's any Iowa fan that wouldn't think that Padilla wouldn't have a greater capacity to extend plays. If he's in the game, we'll probably have a chance to see that.
Concerned at all with Riley Moss in coverage this week?
Sure, I am. Absolutely. Riley's a smart guy, though. He recognizes, I've been beaten a few times this season. Thankfully, I don't think any of them have turned into touchdowns, but there have been big receptions. Maybe the receiver had to leave his feet to make a play. I'm talking about balls that were thrown 35 yards or so downfield. And you remember them as well as I do, Corey. There have been at least 2 or 3 of them. There have been other defenders that were also beaten deep downfield. I guarantee those DBs haven't forgotten those situations of which we didn't get punished for them allowing that receiver to get on top of us. But I don't think we can assume Ohio State's going to overthrow those. So we have to maintain our coverage. We have to force them to continually throw the ball short of us. And then I have no doubt that we can react up and tackle well. Maybe we can even separate the receiver from the ball from time to time. But the bottom line, we have to test their patience. We have to make them snap the ball a lot of times before they get to the end zone. Just eliminate the big plays. If we can force turnovers, win big on turnovers, and eliminate big plays, we have a great chance to win this football game.
Don, I appreciate it as always. I know this is going to be a game where Iowa fans enter the 11 a.m. kickoff with very few expectations, and perhaps the players do as well, and perhaps playing with next to no pressure will help the offense to play loose and to be able to actually give us something to cheer about positively on the offensive side. Don, appreciate the time, and I know you and I are not going to be on the air together on Saturday. I'll be here for Iowa postgame, but you and I are going to be live Sunday night at 7 p.m., correct?
Yes. I won't be able to see the game until Sunday morning, but I'll TiVo it, of course, and I'll be all set to talk about it at 7 o'clock that night.
All right, Coach. Safe travels this weekend, and we'll talk after the game.
Sounds good, Corey.
Thank you, sir.
Take care.
All right. Appreciate Coach Patterson being here, and lots of great comments in the chat. A couple of them I have saved here. We're going to get to the super chats in just a moment. A reminder to follow me on Twitter at From the Hawkeye. You can also like From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Facebook. When we come back, more here on Hawkeye Hangout, including your calls, your questions. We'll open up the call line right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Hawkeye fans, let's talk about health and performance optimization for a moment. Our sponsor, Ascent Nutrition, offers amazing products. It's actually owned by former Iowa graduate Lance Shuttler. Now, I've decided to partner with Ascent Nutrition because of their unique approach to human health. Ascent offers an organically grown, mold and mycotoxin-free coffee. It provides a pure, clean, and rich flavor without those pesticides that most coffees are treated with. They also offer an algae oil DHA, which is used to support brain health, memory, and focus, as well as proper nervous system development in adults, children, athletes, and even pets. Now, lastly, their unique crafted wild pine pollen is used to support cardiovascular health, hormonal function, and a healthy libido. Your purchase not only supports this channel, but the business of a former Hawkeye. Visit goascentnutrition.com or click the link in the description below and use the code Hawkeyes. That's the code Hawkeyes to receive 15% off your total order from Ascent Nutrition. So appreciate Ascent Nutrition as always. D. Brown. Hey, Corey, never wear that shirt again. Well, since you said to never wear this shirt again, I'll never wear it again. Now, why you're so infatuated with what clothing I'm wearing, that's, I don't understand that. But yes, since you asked nicely, I'll never wear that shirt again. Okay, Mark, appreciate this comment, Mark, and the kindness. And again, as I say so many times, the show would be nothing without Coach Patterson on here. So thank you for being here, Mark, and appreciate your support. Pugmaster, thank you for the super sticker. Pugmaster. Love the name, love the picture, love the support. So thank you, Pugmaster. Dave wants me to cover Michigan football. Now, why would I do that, Dave? I think Dave is a Michigan fan. I appreciate that. I'll take that as a compliment. If I had time, I'd be happy to start a Michigan show. If I had time to follow Michigan like I follow Iowa, I'd be happy to talk Wolverine football. Doc P asks, Roberts, is he out? Well, that's the word on the street, Doc P. It sounds like, according to Kirk Ferentz, Terry has a slim chance of playing this weekend. So they could use him. They could use depth in the secondary. I brought up Riley Moss to Coach Patterson specifically because of what Coach Patterson brought up. Riley has been beaten on some big plays this year, and he was beaten on some big plays last year. Now, he hasn't been beat on a double cut, I don't believe yet, but don't be surprised if, certainly I would think Phil Parker is going to be stressing discipline and coverage for Iowa's DBs. I wouldn't be surprised to see them take some shots towards Cooper DeJean and test that young corner as well. He's had a quiet couple of games, but it will be interesting without Terry Roberts. They don't have a ton of depth back there. When they go with a quote-unquote nickel package and you want Sebastian Castro in your prototypical cash spot, are you playing TJ Hall, potentially? True freshman TJ Hall in the horseshoe. They don't have a ton of depth there. So maybe something will change with Terry Roberts, but it doesn't sound good. Berger, if the season ended today, Iowa's 238.7 yards per game would be the 13th worst yards per game output of any FBS team since 2004. Third worst among Power 5 offenses during that same time. Wow. Those are good numbers. I mean, not good numbers. Those are horrid numbers, but good statistics. I appreciate the data, the information, Berger, and appreciate the super chat as always and your support. Berger, one of our premium subscribers as well, so thank you for that. OS for Hawk says, what is Keegan Johnson's injury? I saw somebody commented in the chat. I don't feel comfortable saying what I've been told because it hasn't been from Keegan Johnson's mouth, and the coaching staff has not went on the record and said what the injury is. But if you had to ask me right now, will Keegan Johnson play sometime this season? I would probably say no. And certainly Kirk Ferentz's response to a question about Keegan on Tuesday did not scream to me that he was real positive about Keegan's outlook for the rest of the season. But again, that's just me conjecting, I guess. D. Brown says it's all good. Just go blue. I figured you were a Michigan fan, D. Brown. I appreciate you being here, as always. I recognized your name in the chat, so appreciate you being here. Brian E. says, Michigan fans love you, Corey. Well, some of them hate me, Brian, so I guess the Michigan fans who are here love me, but there's plenty of other ones that despise me. Kenneth, appreciate you being here, Kenneth, supporting the show. Cole, appreciate the super chat. What are your thoughts on Nebraska this year? Well, they got a few more weeks before the Iowa game. That game scares me, Cole. I think Nebraska has the talent, whether they put it all together against Iowa this year. They've got the talent to win that football game. I think Iowa's offense will keep almost every team left on their schedule, with the exception maybe being Northwestern. Northwestern is just horrid right now. And I thought after that game against Nebraska week 0 that, hey, Northwestern's going to be able to run the football. They've got good quarterback play. Throw all that out the window. Northwestern is bad. So I would expect Iowa to win that game handily, just because, I mean, I don't know how Northwestern's going to move the football, frankly. If Iowa loses to Northwestern, we got big issues. We got big issues anyways, but they're going to have bigger issues. Hawk Not, if Moss gets beat more than twice this game, I'd think about putting Wampa in. Well, Wampa is not a corner, A. And B, I don't know if you don't put, unless they're comfortable, I don't see them making any subs this weekend. I understand where you're coming from because, again, Moss has been susceptible to double cuts, and this is an explosive offense that can take advantage of maybe some tendencies there in Iowa's defense, but they just don't have the depth. That's why it's a luxury having a guy like Terry Roberts or Cooper DeJean or Jamari Harris coming off the bench. But hey, right now you don't have Jamari Harris. He's out for the year. You don't have Terry Roberts. It doesn't sound like you're going to have Terry Roberts, and everybody else is inexperienced. I don't know the status of Brandon Diaz-Fernandez, who was on the 2 deep to start fall camp. I have no idea what his status is. I know he's been fighting injuries, but perhaps he would be the third guy in. I don't know. But my guess is you've got TJ Hall, Diaz-Fernandez, and then the Jamison Hines, the kid from Humboldt. Steve brings up testing Iowa's safeties, and I will say that Kayvon Merriweather, he's been a pleasant, I shouldn't say surprise. I was hoping he would step up, but boy, he has been really good this year in general. I think he got beat on a deep pass against South Dakota State to one of the Yankee brothers, and it was overthrown. Had that pass been completed, perhaps South Dakota State wins that game in Kinnick. But the point is, he ever since then, I haven't seen too many glaring mistakes from Kayvon Merriweather. He's played well. Yeah, CJ brings up a con. I had somebody reach out to me about this. I think it was James reached out to me about this a few days ago. So yeah, Caleb Johnson, if anybody missed that, I guess I should address that. Iowa freshman running back Caleb Johnson did post to his Instagram story a picture of true freshman quarterback Carson May with the caption QB1 and then a fingers crossed emoji. I think it was later taken down, which is not a surprise. I made the comment after that happened that it's just not a good look for anybody involved. I know some Iowa fans like seeing that type of stuff. They like seeing stuff get riled up. And, does that mean that Carson May is the next great thing? It's a freshman running back making a comment about a guy who's in his class. Could be. Maybe he's roommates with Carson. That very well could be. And Carson May is likely not even playing. I mean, he's on the scout team. I'm assuming, right? Maybe be the fourth quarterback, I'm assuming. So I don't know how Caleb Johnson would be able to say he's QB1. But again, I wouldn't be surprised those guys are friends. They are true freshmen coming in. Neither one of them enrolled early, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're roommates, frankly. So yeah, not great. But Iowa, let's be honest, they've avoided some major issues that could have reared their ugly heads based on the 3-3 start and the issues on offense. Haven't had any off the field issues that I'm aware of, any criminal issues, no OWIs, knock on wood, no OWIs on a Sunday night. We haven't had any weird Friday news dumps from the Iowa Athletic Administration, although some fans would treasure a news dump if it's the right news dump. But my point is, so far, even during the bye week, nothing of note. That's positive. This was unfortunate because it's not going to do Caleb Johnson any good. If anything, that's going to put him in the doghouse. I hope not. I hope that Iowa can be reasonable and not be spiteful towards a freshman running back who's wants the offense to be better and simply made, he's not making a derogatory comment about Spencer Petras or Alex Padilla, but he's simply, he's going out. That's why Kirk Ferentz doesn't want his players on Twitter. I mean, I'm not saying that players shouldn't be able to be on Twitter during the season, but that's precisely why. I don't think it was ever about controlling. I mean, it is about controlling things to an extent, but these are the types of things that just don't help your program. Okay, we've got ZJ who has been on hold. Zach's on the phone for us. Zach, how you doing this evening, sir?
Good. How's it going, Corey?
I'm doing okay. I'm looking forward to this game on Saturday. I don't know why I'm looking forward to the game on Saturday, but I'm actually looking forward to the game.
12 days till Big Ten basketball season starts. Or till Iowa season starts.
You got it. Yeah, 12 days. Can you believe that? I mean,
yeah.
Granted, the exhibition, and you get another week in between. Yeah. But, yeah, you're right. 12 days.
And a top 5 ranked women's basketball team. So.
Unbelievable.
So my question is, if you were Kirk Ferentz or Brian Ferentz, I'd almost treat this game like an NCAA basketball tournament game where you're the 16 seed going against the 1. Throw caution to the wind. You're playing with house money. And if you're 29-point underdogs, I think more likely they're probably going to lose, but why not? I mean, just pull out all the stops?
Absolutely. That's what Coach Patterson. That's not you just as a fan saying that. I mean, Coach Patterson made that exact comment. I mean, there's no reason not to take extensive shots in this game. I mean, what do you have to lose at this point? I mean, the one thing you can fall back on is that, hey, we were aggressive in 2017 against this team. Granted, it's a team completely, I mean, the roster is completely different. But, I mean, Ryan Day was a coach on that staff in 2017. So they can fall back on the fact that, hey, we figured out a way to score a lot of points against this team just 5 years ago.
Right. And I wish I knew how much they were underdogs back then, because no one expected them to win that game. And then they won by 31. What also do you think of, and I'm not a big fan of having basically Spencer being almost like the lynching pin in press conferences. Why doesn't Kirk allow like Brian to take those questions and basically throw Spencer to the wolves in a sense?
Well, I don't even believe Spencer was available to the press this past Tuesday for the first time all year. Yeah, I mean, you that's a fair point. If you watch the press conference with Brian here last week, I think part of the problem is he'd never get to leave, right? I mean, everybody just be surrounding Brian the entire time. Are you talking about like when their poolside style interviews, like on Tuesdays?
I would say they're the post games, because
the post games.
Petras looked just, I don't want to say defeated. He almost looked defeated after the Illinois game in the post game.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking, why doesn't he have Brian go out there and take those questions? And because I think that's part of where some of the hate for Spencer comes in, because what's he supposed to say unless he's being told what to say?
No, you're right. I've been saying that for a while. There's at times a lack of accountability with the way things are set up, because why does Spencer have to take the heat every single Saturday? And I think you're onto something. I mean, just from maybe it's just a psychological or subconscious reaction from fans that are going to, I mean, we all put too much emphasis on the quarterback position in general. And there is, I mean, I think we can both agree that's the most important position on the field, but perhaps the most important coach on game day is the offensive coordinator. So the fact that we don't get to see him is unfortunate.
Yeah. And then, having Spencer basically say we're improving, which I'm assuming, what else can he say? We suck.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I have no doubt they are improving, right? I mean, they're improving, but it doesn't like, again, like say I was a high school basketball coach and my team got beat 100-5, and then the next game I got beat 100-7. I could say, well, my team's improving, but it's not improving anywhere close to the rate of improvement that you need to be competitive, and that's where they're at right now. Yes, the team is competitive, but offensively, they're not competitive with anybody. I mean, that's why they're dead last in the FBS and offense.
Yeah, and I think I might have said this before on a call. I think Brian would be better as an offensive line coach, but I hate to say what offensive coordinator would want to come to Iowa when I think it's probably Kirk running the shots. I don't see him running a Purdue style offense ever.
No,
even
he's
though
not.
they did partially in 2002, but you also had a quarterback who could bust out for a 40-yarder if he needed to.
No, I mean, regardless of what happens after this season, if Iowa brings in someone else, they're still going to. I still believe that they're going to run a pro style. I mean, hopefully, they're going to. I mean, they've got quarterbacks in the next couple of classes that are mobile. They're considered to be mobile guys, but they're still going to run a pro style formation, pro style offense. So I'm not saying there are guys out there, Zach, that would be viable candidates. I mean, I brought one up as a QB's coach last spring that would have been a perfect candidate to be inserted into this system and be able to work with pro style quarterbacks. And I mean, I know it's easier said than done, but I believe that there are candidates out there who would do at least a viable job to where you can have a top 100 offense.
Yeah. Well, they even had top 100 offense. They probably would have beaten Illinois. Illinois has got a great defense. I'll give them credit. But yeah, I don't see a scenario where Iowa probably pulls this one out unless the stars align.
Yeah.
And they align perfectly.
I agree.
Unless they start throwing these double reverse passes and stuff that no one's seen before, and the offensive line can actually pass block. And so, my hope is by the end of the first quarter, it's not already like 24-0.
Yeah. Let's hope it's not 24-0 at halftime.
Yeah. But, yeah, great show. Great here, Don. Go Hawks, and have a great show.
We'll wish for the best, Zach. Appreciate your call, sir.
Thanks.
All right. Well, yeah. Wish for the best, hope for the best, etc. Doc P says, any word on David Cobb? Is he giving up football? Is he transferring back next year? No idea, Doc P. If I had to put just my gut feeling on this, is he probably will not be a Hawkeye, would be my guess. I don't know the situation. Kirk at one time said it was health related, but it's obviously a personal thing. They haven't expounded on it, so I have no idea what he's going to do. Or what the reason behind him sitting out is, because he was listed as I believe the backup left tackle heading into fall camp, I believe. So, yeah, unfortunate, because he was another guy. If you watch my segment earlier today on this channel about Iowa's offensive line issues, a lot of the issues have been attrition related due to transfers and guys just walking away from football. And you want to talk about Iowa being young? Well, let's look at the reasons why they're young. All right. There's other teams out there, most teams that have good offenses in the Big Ten, right? These guys, I mean, regardless of what type of an offense you're running, you've got offensive linemen who are experienced, some of them fourth, fifth, even sixth year guys. And even the guys who are fourth, fifth, and sixth year guys on Iowa's roster now, and there's not a ton of them, they ain't playing. That's a problem. And so check out that segment I released earlier today. But yeah, David Cobb would be an example of another one. If they lose him, 4-star guy, high 4-star guy, maybe the best guy in the 21 class, that for whatever reason doesn't work out here. And it's become a trend over the past 3 to 4, even 5 years now. Steve says, how is Drew Tate doing at UNI? That's a great question. I don't really have an answer. I don't really follow UNI. In fact, that'd be a better question for Coach Patterson, because he does work for the Missouri Valley television, calling some of these games. So he would probably have an idea of how the quarterback position is, how Drew Tate is doing coaching quarterbacks up at UNI. All right, let's see here. Justin says, which years did Coach Don coach at Iowa? Justin, he was there from the moment Hayden Fry stepped onto campus till the moment he left. I believe Don was the only assistant coach who was with Hayden his entire tenure. He was also with him was it 78 at North Texas, I believe, if I have the dates correct. And then, of course, he was a coordinator in the 90s. So, yeah, Don was the right-hand man of Hayden Fry. He'd never say that, but he kind of was over the years. And Hayden had a lot of great coaches. We know that coaching tree was extensive, whether you're talking about Bill Snyder or Dan McCarney or Kirk Ferentz or Barry Alvarez. You go down the list, Brett Bielema, etc. Coach Patterson's a big part of that, winningest head coach in Western Illinois history. And he did, by the way, interview for the Iowa job in '99. Of course, they went with Kirk Ferentz. Who knows how things would have changed had they went with Coach Patterson or had they went with Barry Alvarez. Of course, Oklahoma got Barry and went on to win a national title. I believe James is up next, but James, your device is not connected. So I think I got to all the super chats. Phil Parker's Paw says, can we talk about the $100,000 QB guru that was hired in the offseason? What a waste of moolah. So how much is he actually making? I know he's making like $16,000 a week. Is that right? $16,000 a week? That can't be right. $16,000 a month, maybe. Whatever it is, still ridiculous. We're not seeing results in the field. John Budmeyer right now, I mean, he's just an analyst, but I think they've found a way around some of the, I mean, I don't know this for a certain, but my guess is they found a way around, there's a loophole in language that limits what this guy can do as far as on-field work during practice, because why have him there if he's not able to help or to work with Spencer Petras and the quarterbacks? But we're not seeing results. I agree with you. We're not seeing results right now. There have not been any substantial improvement from Spencer Petras from last season to this season, at least not on the eye test. And I don't think the numbers would indicate that either. And I mean, the coaching staff would have you believe that there hasn't been much improvement from the guys behind Spencer Petras, which again says a lot, and it's an indictment on the coaches themselves. Okay, we've got James now. I believe he's connected to his audio. James,
what's up? First off, Drew Tate's not listed as a quarterback coach at UNI.
What do you mean he's not listed?
He's listed as a different position, not the quarterback coach.
Okay, what's he listed?
On their coaching profile, he's listed as a tight ends coach. So I don't know if like he was going to be a quarterback coach and they switched him, but he's listed as a tight end coach on their thing. Because I went to one of their games, and like in the program, he was listed as a tight end coach.
It's interesting. Yeah, I'm seeing that as well. Yeah, that is interesting.
So yeah, I don't know. Because I know he was the quarterback coach at UT Martin, so I don't know how that changed, but.
Well, yeah, I don't know why he'd be coaching tight ends. Not that he couldn't coach tight ends, but I'm just surprised by that.
Yeah. A couple of things I had. First off is like the injuries. Do you think this is a year where we've had the most injuries?
No.
Does it seem a bit more than it just seems like more because we've had more to bigger names, or like, Keegan's been out for so long. Like the injuries seem to be longer. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot more longer ones. Like Taylor Roberts hasn't played in how long? Jamar Harris out for the year. Keegan Johnson out for the year. So I don't know, like if it just seems because they're longer, maybe it seems like it's more, but
I think we say this every year, James. I really do.
I guess true, yeah.
If you go back, like I remember this, we've had this conversation literally. I'm not knocking you for the question, but I literally remember these same conversations like the last 3 to 4 years. Injuries are a part of football. I remember when Iowa was. I mean, I've said this time and time again. Iowa seems to be decimated at defensive back every single year. Cornerbacks get banged up every single year. That's why depth is always at a premium at that position. Offensive linemen get banged up typically. Iowa's actually been really healthy along that offensive line. Let's think about that for a second. As bad as the offensive line has been, they've actually been pretty healthy. I know DeYoung has been banged up, and I think Plum was banged up at one point, but for the most part, guys are staying healthy there. Wide receiver, yeah, I mean, I think we notice that more now because Iowa's thin there, and the offense is so bad that it's easy to fall back on, well, if we were healthy. And I'm not saying you're implying that, but I think the coaches have went out there and brought up injuries. And sure, that's a factor. But I'm telling you this right now, James, if Iowa had Keegan Johnson, if he'd been playing as a healthy wide receiver since week 1, I don't know that it'd make a huge difference. Perhaps they'd be 120th in total offense. The offense is what the offense is, and I don't think they've had any increase in injuries this year as opposed to other seasons.
I definitely agree with the fact that I don't think it would be any different. Like, I think the record would still be the same, and the defense, the offense would be a little better, but I agree that the record would be the same probably, even with Keegan still there. And I think even with Jamari still there, just in the fact that the offense would be so bad, the defense still going to be on the field so much. Jamari would just give him a little bit more depth, but...
Yeah, I mean, maybe you win the Iowa State game. I mean, that game you could feasibly say maybe you win. I mean, Iowa's not far from being, 5-1, but they're also not far from being, 2-4. They could have easily lost that South Dakota State game. So yeah, I don't buy into the idea that the injuries are the reason for this, because again, they were bad last year.
The only reason I brought up the Caleb Johnson thing to you was because, like, in my eyes, it's like, I don't understand. Like, I think some people on offense are getting frustrated. You know what I'm saying? Like, some of the players are getting frustrated. Sure. You know what I mean? Where, like, but they're afraid to say something. So, like, I didn't know maybe if that was Caleb Johnson's way of trying to say, like, I'm frustrated, or if it was just him trying to be, like, his friend. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I think, obviously, somebody has to be frustrated. They can't all be happy with it. You know what I mean?
Oh, no, nobody's happy with it. And they can... I mean, what Jack Campbell does when he gets in front of a camera and he's endorsing his quarterback and Spencer Petras, that's just what a good leader does. But that doesn't mean behind the scenes he's not unhappy. And we had a caller, I think last week, who brought up that he observed some body language when he was at the Illinois game this past week or the week before last that would indicate that there are offensive players unhappy. Of course there are. I mean, they're frustrated. They may not be saying that, but they're frustrated. But they're never going to go in front of a camera and say, hey, we're holding up our end of the bargain. What's the offense doing? They're just not going to do that. And that's good. That shows a good leadership and is a credit to the culture that's been built here. But no, there's frustration all around.
What is your, like, obviously I'm trying to look past this, but, like, for me, it's more like, I want to see, to be honest with you, I want to see if Padilla gets in. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, what he said, obviously I know they tried to double down where they're like, oh, well, we have faith. I don't know if that was today or whatever, but they tried to double down a little bit. They're like, oh, we have faith in him if he has to go in, try to change it. But like he said, there's no upside for putting him. I want to see if he goes in, because there's been times where he should have won in the game, I felt like, to at least get some reps, and he didn't go in at all. So my interesting thing is, like, maybe I want to see if Padilla actually gets in the game.
Oh, I think Padilla probably will this week. Because they're going to be, if you fall behind, I mean, theoretically, there's a greater chance that Iowa gets blown out in this game than there is that they win. I think that's fair to say. So I would say there's a good chance that Padilla gets brought in. And it'd be the smart move from a perception standpoint if you're Kirk Ferentz, based on what your son said. And I understand that Brian probably didn't mean it the way it sounded, but he said what he said. And it would be a good PR move if Kirk Ferentz made a point, even if it's just in garbage time, to put in Alex Padilla. And hey, James, if Kirk's if Kirk's motivation here is to not give fans any idea to think that Alex Padilla is better, what better game to put him in than the Ohio State game? Because there's a good chance that he puts Alex Padilla in and Alex doesn't look very good, right? So that might be a motivation to actually play him.
Especially because their second strings, are going to be better than most of our first stringers, just because of the way they recruit and the way they have it. So, like, no matter what, even if he's in there with their second team, or because their second team is still, like, he's going up against people that would start at most schools in the country, Yep. So for that, it's kind of difficult that way. But, like, one other thing I had too is, like, how do you think, like, okay, you've always been an advocate for the transfer portal. I know you've been an advocate for transfer portal quarterback, right? I mean, you have been.
For Iowa, I don't love the transfer. I want to say
for us to get better at quarterback, at least
because of our situation. Yeah.
An advocate for that. And I'm not trying to look for the future, but it's just, like, weird for me because, like, they kind of remind me of the thing they said about Deuce. In a way, what they said about Padilla. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like,
What's that got to do with Iowa going to the portal?
Because like, if he transfers, I don't know if Labus is ready. Is my point. If Padilla transfers, and Petrus doesn't come back.
Well, Brian acted like Labus isn't even close.
So yes, then they have to go to the portal.
Well, they don't have to because they weren't. I mean, Labus was, I'm sure, even further off last year, and quarterback play was poor last year, and they didn't. So they don't have to do anything. The only way they have to do something is if the administration and donors step in.
That's what I've been saying all along, though, is that like I feel like we'd have to make a change, or have to force a change at that for them to realize a change. But I think it'd be interesting to see, and obviously I don't I want to always have faith every game, but obviously this is one that kind of, it's hard to have a little bit of faith in when you're this bad. Oh yeah, yes, that's what I was gonna say. I'm glad I remembered. You talked about like the offense not being able to move, right? So like, I noticed if we get pinned deep, right, we average like what? We can barely get first down half the time. So that's going to put us behind the chains, and then we're going to give up a lot of points. I think that way, just because like we can't move the ball. Like the South Dakota State game was a good example by you, where we had we got the ball in the 30 or like the 35 and got like 5 yards the whole drive, and then we had to kick it.
Yeah, I mean, just moving the ball is this. I think what's the stat I heard that Iowa's not gotten a first down on like 45% of their, is that correct? Something like that. They've actually had almost half of their drives have been 3 and outs. That's unbelievable.
That's scary against a lot of teams you play too. Like, I'm not just looking for it, but like, you definitely ain't gonna. I don't think you'll upset a team with that number, especially a team like this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it's possible, because at least the offense, when we beat them in 2017, was at least capable. Stanley was at least capable, and you had tight ends who are Noah Fant and TJ Hawkinson. So like that makes a bigger difference than it does now.
Yeah, you're right.
So like, I think it'd be interesting to see, but I hope you enjoy your night, and I appreciate you always getting on. It was a little late. I was watching some NBA. I wish Keegan would have been playing, but I hope he feels better. He was shooting around today, I heard. So
yeah, Keegan is out for the opener, but we're gonna see him pretty soon because he has solidified himself as I think is he gonna be a starter in your book, James?
I think he kind of has to be. He was shooting around today. I heard like he was back today. He just hasn't been practicing enough because like the whole week pretty much. So they were trying to they didn't want to play him after missing like the whole week pretty much. So they just sat him out today, but they said he should be starting Saturday. It sounds like.
I think he's a starter. I appreciate the phone call, James, and we'll look forward to hearing from you on Saturday.
Enjoy your night.
Thank you, sir. All right, we've got Austin on the line. Austin, welcome to the show. Thanks for calling.
Thank you for having. I do apologize. I am going to rewind a little bit. I had some points that I wanted to bring up after the Michigan game, but I haven't been able to get in on a Wednesday.
Okay.
So, and the point that I was going to make just holds very, very true after Illinois as well. And that is, I feel like this year in particular, we have just been shooting ourselves in the foot with penalties. I went through, and again, unfortunately, have to rewind to the Michigan game a little bit because that's where I actually took the time to watch and look at all of the penalties. The official stat line is Michigan had 5 penalties for 50 yards. We had 5 penalties for 55 yards. But after going in and accounting for yardage lost, or I guess defensive yardage given because of the penalty, it actually, and I went back and rewatched it. Anyway, it came out to Michigan with 5 penalties for 69 yards. Iowa 5 penalties for 98 yards after several big plays that got removed back. Yeah. That also turned into us losing 2 first downs that were 2 plays that would have been a first down, no longer a first down because of penalty, and us also defensively giving them 2 first downs, one of which ended in a touchdown, the other of which ended in a field goal, went on a play that would have been, I think one was 3rd and 17 and the other was 3rd and 2. I don't remember. Anyway, so in general, the Michigan game is the only one that I compiled stats on. But looking at the yardage given and the first downs given, just strictly due to penalties, that feels almost like a more winnable game if we were to have actually played a clean game.
Well, yeah, penalties have been that's been the disconcerting thing. As this offense improves marginally, it seems like penalties have become more of a problem. And again,
Absolutely.
I went back and tracked each game either, Austin, but I think you're right in that. And that's something the bye week, hopefully. I mean, I think Iowa proved last year. Remember, they had a bye week prior to that Wisconsin beatdown. And so they proved that a bye week doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make some massive jump on offense. But I would have to think penalties are something that could be cleaned up over a bye week. And a lot of those penalties that they've had have been unforced. I mean, we're talking about, I know people were defending Brian
jumping the
because he was,
ball.
well, the Illinois game. I mean, you have Brian Ferentz gets an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty because he's in the official's face. I mean, that's easily correctable. They have had dumb false starts, like first or second play of a drive. That's unacceptable, right? I mean, those things can be cleaned up. So I would hope that the bye week helps in those regards.
And to me, it just seems like this year in particular, we've been just playing very undisciplined. And that leads into penalties. That leads into our defensive backs kind of biting in. Moss, in particular, I think you've pointed out, has gotten bit a little bit, not sticking where he should necessarily be and biting up, which a couple times saved. I think that's why he forced the fumble last week when he got it, because he bit up instead of sticking with his receiver. But anyway, some kind of small disciplinary issues as far as just sticking where we should be, staying on the ball, not getting in another player's face after a play, etc. Again, I did pull up a little bit of a stat line here in the last 10 years as far as penalties for Iowa. We were 21, 4.1 yards, 20, 4.8. And I'm just going to go down the list quickly. So in 21, 4.1, 20, 4.8, 4.3, 4.3, 5.1, and 17, we had a little bit higher at 5.1, 5.1. In 2015, we were down to 3.5 penalties per game. 14, 3.4 penalties per game. We've been consistently between that 3 and just slightly under 5 penalties per game. This year already, we are at 5.6 penalties per game, and I can only see that actually going up because as we've been progressing, we've been getting more and more each game with, I think, 8 in the Illinois game. I don't recall.
We'll see what this week is. Like I say, Austin, let's wait to see what corrections are made after the bye, because you're right. It's been trending in that direction, but I would hope those things would be addressed. But those are good stats. I mean, those are very worthwhile stats.
We're fantastic.
You can't expect to overcome a bad run game, a bad passing game, poor quarterback play, and tons of injuries at wide receiver. Unless you can't really expect to overcome that anyways. But then when you pile on the fact that, you're also committing dumb penalties. And I think part of the penalties thing, Austin, is probably, without going back and tracing individual penalties, is inexperienced guys who are in a moment that they're not comfortable with, whether you're talking about Logan Jones or you're talking about a freshman walk-on receiver who's been forced into duty. Again, without looking at the specifics, I wouldn't be able to say that convincingly, but I think that probably plays into it as well.
And then the other port, and this kind of goes on the same track. Why is it that we hit, and it feels to me like we've got a good offense with the caveat of they're just not quite hitting. It's like having I'm not a mechanic by any means, but I'm going to try to assume I know what's going on under the hood of a car. 8-cylinder engine, but we've only got one firing. The potential is there. The potential is very much there, but our timing, our line, our team is just not acting as one engine.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Austin. What gives you the idea that the Iowa offense has the potential to be good?
Because we hit these weird tracks, and this happened. I apparently have the Michigan game in my head right now, we have these weird tracks where we just get 60 yards in a drive, and then we go 3 and outs, and then we hit 60 yards in a drive with 4 passes caught in a row for a first down every time. We hit these weird tracks where we're really good for about 3 minutes, and then we go 3 and out for the next 4 drives. It's just so peculiar to me that we hit these weird. We seem to have one per game where we hit a receiver, we hit a tight end, we hit a receiver, and we're gone. And then we never actually. Our biggest downfall is we have one of the worst red zone completions in college football right now. We have absolutely zero capability to capitalize once we do get to the red zone, which is a rarity.
Let me challenge you in this. When has Iowa all season? When has Iowa consistently moved the ball when there's actually been pressure on? I'm not talking about when you're down 17 points or whatever it was against Michigan and Iowa started to kind of take advantage of the moment there. When has the pressure been on, and when has Iowa been able to move the ball? They didn't do it against South Dakota State. They didn't do it against Iowa State. They didn't do it against Rutgers. They didn't do it against Illinois. They didn't do it against Michigan.
That is the point that I'm trying to make, though. Our consistency isn't there, but
right.
They're showing the potential in a 1 drive per game stasis. Illinois, they had 2 big drives that came out with nothing in the red zone. I thought 2 60 or 70 yard drives.
Yeah, I don't think coming up with 1 good drive per game means that you have the potential to be good. That just means you're not good. I mean, I get what you're saying. I'm not trying to rip the personnel Iowa has, but recruiting is part of the problem. Development and recruiting is a big part of it. I mean, right? It's more often about listen, the X's and O's are important, and I think Iowa has an issue with play calling and schematics, but they also have an issue with Jimmys and Joes. And I get what you're saying. I do. And I'm not saying Iowa doesn't have some good pieces to the puzzle. I think Sam Laporta is a really good tight end in the Big Ten, probably a top 2 or 3 tight end in the Big Ten. He's playing in the worst offense in the Big Ten, so people aren't talking about him. I think Iowa's got a good running back core. I think Iowa's wide receiving core is subpar, frankly. And I saw Arland Bruce III in the chat. That not saying that Arland Bruce IV doesn't have potential. He does. But with injuries and the loss of Charlie Jones, the loss of Tyrone Tracy, it's hard. That's a unit, right? It's a collective unit that has to play well together. And right now you can't function with 1 or 2 playmakers out there and, a walk-on or a guy who's, Sam Laporta's lined up out wide at wide receiver a number of times this season because they haven't had the depth at wide receiver. So I'm not saying they don't have good personnel, but it's not. I mean, compare the personnel at Iowa to the personnel at Ohio State. It's night and day. And you know that. I mean, I'm not, not teaching you anything there, but I don't know. I just am hesitant to say, well, they've shown they have potential because I haven't seen much reason to believe that.
Okay. And admittedly, even with the glimpses of what I see as potential anyway, even on those points where things seem to be hitting, the one thing that is consistently just not there is our line. But again, I'm not teaching you anything there. That's always been for all of this year anyway.
Right.
But that's all I had.
I appreciate it, Austin. Thanks for the call, and we'll plan on talking to you maybe on Saturday.
I believe actually, yeah. I'll be watching anyway if I've got anything interesting to say.
Sounds good, sir. We'll talk soon.
You have a good night.
All right. We've got Ben, we've got Mike, and I've got the phone line open. So if anybody else wants to hop in here before the end of the show, I'm going to try to wrap up a little earlier than normal tonight. I do want to get to a couple of super chats here. One from John Buckeye. He says, Corey, so if Ohio State's offense scores 45 points this weekend, will you and the fans still be calling Iowa's defense elite? What's your take? If Iowa gives up 20 or less, that would be impressive. 20 or less? I don't think I don't expect the Iowa defense to give up 20 or less against the maybe the best scoring, probably the best scoring. They are the best scoring offense in the country. I think that's unfair, John. I don't know that you can put a point total towards it. Look, the Iowa defense was really good last year, and they gave up 42 to Michigan in the Big Ten championship game because the offense is so bad that it puts more and more pressure on your defense, drive after drive after drive. And then there were some late garbage scores that didn't make a difference. So I don't really think, I've always been an advocate against just measuring performance based on points per game, whether you're talking about your offense or your defense. And I would venture to say the same thing about this question. If Iowa's defense holds Ohio State in check, but Spencer Petras throws 2 pick sixes, again, that doesn't mean nothing about the defense. So if they give up 45 points, then there are some concerns defensively. However, I believe this is the best offense in the country they're playing. So this is the ultimate test, John. I do think this Iowa defense is really good. And the numbers say they're really good, John. They're right now, Iowa is number 3 in the country in scoring defense. So how is that not elite? I mean, number 3 in the country in scoring defense. I don't understand. Mike, let's get to your phone call. Appreciate you calling in, Mike. And I saw earlier you have a beef to pick with me, but can you agree with me that Iowa gave up 27 to Michigan, but they are still the number 3 scoring defense in the country? That is elite.
I'm not like I said. I'm not saying they're bad. Here
we go.
What? I just I guess elite is kind of a word I don't kick around very often.
Okay, so what's elite? What's elite? If top 5 in the country out of 131 teams is not elite, then what's elite?
Well, I'm kind of with John Buckeye there. I'm kind of curious as to see what the point threshold is going to be for Ohio State. That's how I would honestly measure elite.
So in other words, if Spencer Petras throws 3 pick sixes, all right, and it's 21-0, and then Ohio State has 2 offensive touchdowns, do the math on that. That's 35 points. They give up 35 points, but 21 of those points came off pick sixes. That's how to measure the defense's performance?
Well, I would go by offensive touchdowns, not touchdowns.
There's a difference there. There's a difference because when you look at points per game, it's measuring everything.
Okay, offensive points per game. How about that?
Yeah, that's fine. I think that there's obviously quite a bit of substance there. Yeah, and Iowa. Listen, you can't look at total defense as much with Iowa, even though they are number 10 in the country in total defense. But as I've mentioned before, we all know this. I know you're not an Iowa fan, Mike, but Iowa typically is willing to give up yardage. They did that a lot with Michigan. I mean, Michigan scored 27, but 7 of those points came in garbage time, Mike. Michigan had scored 20 through most of that game, and they ran the ball effectively, but Iowa, as they typically do, they make it hard to finish drives. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Iowa just sits back in that zone all day on Saturday and hardly ever goes into man coverage. I don't think there's any reason to go into man coverage because you want to keep everything in front of you, kind of like they did in 2017 against Penn State when Saquon Barkley had like 300 all-purpose yards, but yet it was like 17-15 or something like that. You can play that bend, don't break style. Phil Parker is the master of that. So anyways, what you got for me, Mike?
Well, the main thing I recall is I saw your video before you came on here about the offensive lines, and you're talking about Wisconsin and Ohio State, and it's like you didn't mention us. I'm like, really?
I was just giving I believe you're referring to me when I was giving examples of offensive lines with that typically return experience and production. So I was just giving examples. I also could have. Let's see. Who did I throw? Minnesota, Wisconsin,
and then even Ohio State. I'm like, really?
Well, I could have said Penn State. I didn't say Penn State.
I mean, we returned everybody except our center, and then we replaced him with a guy that won the Remington last year. So he's got a little bit of experience, not with us, but it's not like we threw in a true freshman in there.
I promise it wasn't a sideways zing at Wolverine. For you, Mike.
I was just kind of curious because, this is the same squad that won the Moore Award last year. It's like you think, if you talk about, offensive lines, the argument has to start with us. And you went to all these other teams. I'm like, really?
Yeah, I appreciate. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, that's okay. Now, quick question. Now, who's your starting running back? Now, is Gavin healthy?
Yeah, but it's. I mean, I think hands down, especially after the comment from Caleb Johnson on Instagram, it's LaShawn Williams.
Okay, so it's the other Williams guy.
Yep.
So I'm just trying to, because I'm going to watch the game obviously, because I know thy enemy. So I'm just kind of make sure I know the names on the field. Now was it Brecht? I think is he?
Yeah, Brody Brecht. I presume that he's healthy.
Now, so he was kind of a problem against us.
How?
Well, I mean, he wasn't
What was he
catching every? But I saw him get open a couple times down the field. Now a lot of this was,
That's good. He got open a couple times. Let's pull up the stat. You said he was a problem. I want to pull up the stat sheet.
Okay, I'm not saying
No,
12 catches for 200 yards, but it
Where's
seemed
that?
like, especially towards the end, he was constantly getting open, and I don't know how much of that was we were playing off, or if he was just kind of just juking us in the backfield. But it seems like every time I looked around, if Petrus was throwing a pass and it was caught, it was that Brecht guy. I'm like, what is this guy?
Brody Brecht had 2 receptions for 38 yards.
Okay, so we didn't have many, but 19 yards a catch. I mean, I'd take that to the bank.
Well, they were playing from behind that entire second half. So
yeah,
that was part of. Again, Michigan was kind of sitting back in that zone and just keeping everything in front of them as well.
Yeah, that's true. Now what's I hear about the Arland Bruce? Is he playing?
Yeah, I think so. Got his dad. He got his dad in the chat here.
Is that really his dad?
I think so. Yeah, he's. I think his dad's called the show before. And Arland III, you're welcome to call. Welcome to call. I think he called last year, I believe, if I recall.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure that your defensive coordinator's paw isn't actually calling you, or chatting.
Well, a little bit.
Just the name doesn't really mean much.
I understand. No, I think this is the real Arland Bruce III. I have no reason to think otherwise.
And does he just return punts, or is he kickoffs as well?
No, right now he's just returning punts. They've got Caleb Johnson and Gavin Williams returning kickoffs.
Okay.
So it'd be nice to get something from Arland returning punts. Iowa, since Charlie Jones left, they really haven't had anything of note on special teams, on that side of special teams, in the return game. It'd be nice to see Arland break out this Saturday for something.
Now, does he actually line up as a receiver?
Yeah.
Because I don't see him. I mean, like I said, I don't watch Iowa games as often as you guys do, but I didn't really see him too much lining up, as a wide receiver in the times I watched.
Oh, he's out there. They sent him in motion quite a bit, but they got to get him involved more. I mean, seems like he's, it doesn't seem like it. He was more productive those first couple of weeks when Iowa was dealing with injuries at that position when he had less help around him. I don't know. I don't quite understand why his production has taken the sharp turn downward. That's on Iowa to get him more involved and get him more touches, because he is probably Iowa's most dynamic, proven skill position player. I really like Caleb Johnson, but he's not proven yet. Arland Bruce is a proven guy, so they got to get him the ball. Got to figure out a way to get him in space, because he can. He's a playmaker. I'll agree with that completely.
Now, is he more slot or deep threat?
Well, he's a smaller guy, so I mean they've run him again because of their issues with injuries. They've ran him all over the field, but I think he's probably a guy you prefer in your slot. But Nico Reganey, I mean, that's the issue right now. They don't have a prototypical X like they had with Brandon Smith, from 2017 to 2020. They just don't have that type of a guy. Now, maybe Brody Brecht develops into that type of a guy. They're running him at that position right now. But yeah, I think the nice thing about Arland is he can kind of, I wouldn't call him a Swiss Army knife. Who was it that called themselves a Swiss Army knife? Was it Tyrone Tracy last year? I wouldn't go so far to call him a Swiss Army knife yet, but he is a guy who can be versatile. And again, I'm all for creativity on offense right now.
Couldn't hurt. I mean, you at the point right now, I guess you guys call them exotics now. And that's the word I keep hearing around.
Now, I mean, coaches have been calling them exotics for decades.
Yeah, but I honestly just, following the Iowa chat, I've heard that word more in the last month than I have in the last 5 years of, following football. And I follow a lot of football. You guys are in love with that E word.
Well, We don't get to see it very often, and I'm talking about on the football field. Don't get people's minds out of the gutters, but we don't get
yeah, I figured that. Plus, you guys also talk about punting more than everybody I know too.
I do not talk about punting more than anybody else.
And especially when equating it to winning. I know that bothers you though.
Yes, that does bother me. You will not see me in a punting is winning shirt anytime soon.
Now, is that an actual T-shirt around Iowa City?
Oh yeah. They're I think I want to say that Tory Taylor maybe started that with NIL, and he's given all the proceeds to the Children's Hospital, I believe. But don't quote me on that. I believe that was Tory Taylor's doing.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Well, Mike, I appreciate your phone call, sir. I got to get on to another Michigan fan here who wants to talk, apparently. So,
sounds good. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it, sir. All right, let's get to Ben, who's on hold. Ben, how you doing, sir?
Pretty good, Corey. All of us Michigan fans come out of the woodwork like this and bomb your show.
I don't know why.
We love it, though. We love you, Corey. So,
well, I just don't understand how there's why Michigan fans are so infatuated with this show, but appreciate the support.
No, well, for one, you're playing in Ohio State, and we all are interested in seeing how that game goes. And that's one thing. That's why I'm probably on here tonight. But I like catching your show. I kind of like if I had to pick some other team in the Big Ten, if Michigan was no longer in existence, I would probably be an Iowa fan. So
okay.
But anyways, I was calling. I wanted to back up a little bit about the offense and the caller before the Michigan fan. I was actually calling to say I kind of get his point. Well, actually not calling to say that, but I am. I kind of get his point as far as the offense, and I just don't think. I think the offense only has room to grow because they are playing so bad. I don't see them going anywhere but up. And I know it's a sad way to look at it, but these guys are college players. And at some point, they have to play better.
That's called common sense. That when you're on the floor, the only way to go is up, right?
Yeah. So I look at it. I'm hoping it's this game. Do you expect to see starting this game? Do you expect it to still be Petrus or what?
Yes, I expect it.
Okay. Well, no, I heard other comments, and I wasn't sure if that was just wishful thinking or.
No, there's no wishful thinking. Barring injury, Spencer Petrus is your QB1.
Okay.
He's your QB1. Yours. He's yours.
Yeah,
he belongs to you. I'll tell you what. I'll trade him straight up for JJ McCarthy. How's that?
Oh no.
I'll tell you what. I'll trade him straight.
You'll take him for anybody actually on Michigan's. I bet you would take him. Take any Michigan quarterback.
Oh, I would take him for Cade.
Oh, for sure. Well, we have Bowman. He was a 5,000-yard passer for Texas Tech or something. He's a good. I haven't seen a Michigan quarterback look bad this year. Even though it was garbage, we get to see them in garbage. They're still hitting their passes, and that's what you got to think at some time Petrus is going to have to hit these. And they don't give him hard throws most of the time, and he's missing a lot of the easy throws. You got to think at some point he's going to have a game where he plays decent.
Why?
You got to think. How could there not? He's a college level quarterback. How could there not be? I don't know. I know it's your frustration as a fan base of how could your quarterback play be this abysmal, but you just got to think that it's gonna pick up. I cannot see it.
I don't believe it will. I don't believe it will pick up.
You think it, man, I just cannot see it. I can't see it
Just
continuing this
ask me some
bad.
more, Ben, ask me some more questions about what I think.
All
I'll be
right.
happy to tell you.
All
What
right.
do I think is going to happen? I think Spencer is going to continue to play the way he's played since day one. And I think the coaching staff is going to continue to double down on him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Alex Padilla will likely transfer out of the program. And I don't see Joey Labus ever playing here. That's my guess. Now, I hope he does. I hope a guy like Joey Labus plays here. But, boy, talk about not being given a vote of confidence. If anybody listened to the Brian Ferentz interview last week, Joey Labus should be just as upset as Alex Padilla because he's been here 2 years and he's not getting given any credit for the work he's putting in, not publicly.
Yeah. Do you think that there's some people in the comment we're talking about maybe Cade McNamara transferring to Iowa?
I think Cade McNamara is out of Iowa's league as far as he will be wanted by bigger, or I shouldn't say bigger program. He'll be wanted by offenses that are much more attractive than Iowa's.
Gotcha.
I think he'll have plenty of options out there. I guess that's where I'm coming from. I think Iowa would have. Listen, I would want Iowa to take a shot. I want Iowa to go after a guy like Cade McNamara. I'm just saying, do I think Iowa would get him? Probably not, but you should still go for it. I mean, we'll see. I mean, this past year, Iowa had ample opportunities to go to the portal.
Do you think and now that's that's one of the things I wanted to ask you. Do you think the reason they didn't go to the portal is because they want to have a guy that that they had in the system, and they have your ball security, things that they want to instill in their quarterbacks and their game management?
I believe the reason why Iowa didn't go to the portal is because of Pride A and Pride B.
Oh, gotcha.
I mean, it's the refusal to accept that, hey, we're not developing our guys, and perhaps we were wrong. And that all comes back to pride. Yeah. And pride and stubbornness are synonymous here. And there's a good pride, there's a bad pride. And I think Iowa has a lot of both.
I think
the reason why the Iowa defense continues to. I mean, there's a reason why Iowa can lose a game 9-6 because the defense does not quit. Regardless of how bad the offense is, the defense does not quit. That's good pride. That's taking pride in your team, taking pride in the decal on your helmet. But the bad pride is when the coaches refuse to go to the transfer portal when it's abundantly clear that they need to. Or hire a coach that actually understands the passing game.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could see that being a good pride if you believe in your guys. But I'm not making that judgment call. I'm just saying if they believe in their guy, I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying if they believed in their guys, it's a good thing to have pride in your teammates or in your team. That's a good pride. So that's the only thing I was putting. But yeah, somebody else was making a comment in the chat about Cade thinking Cade would be a great fit for Iowa, and I think he would as well. And that's why I brought that up. I thought he's got a good game management thing, and I think he may be a quarterback that Iowa would take a look at because he does have he doesn't make many mistakes, and that's the kind of guy that Iowa is looking for. He's accurate and he doesn't get rattled too easily.
Yeah, you're right.
But anyways, I'll let somebody else jump on. It was nice talking with you, Corey. That's the only thing I wanted to see your thoughts on why didn't they do the transfer portal. I'm sure you probably mentioned it before, but
no, I've never mentioned the transfer portal.
No. Yeah, all right, man. I'll catch you later. You take care.
All right. A few comments in the chat. We got 2 callers on hold. Casey, do I think that Keegan Johnson transfers? You're asking me what do I think will happen? I think he will. That's my guess. But again, not heard that from Keegan or anybody close to him, but that would be my guess. Jordan, one of our premium subscribers, and appreciate you being a premium subscriber, Jordan. Do you think Labus stays if Padilla transfers? Probably, but again, no guarantees. I have no inside information there. I would guess that Labus would stay and maybe give it one more year, especially if Petrus moves on, which I expect him to, and Padilla moves on. Why not stay if you're Joey Labus? John Buck, I appreciate your super chat earlier, and I was not trying to give you a hard time, but appreciate you being here and for being a subscriber. Iowa's known as great O-lines. How many years has it been now since Iowa has had a good O-line? Maybe 5 years. Well, they were okay in 17 and 18. They won the Joe Moore Award in 16. But yeah, 19 was not good. Now, they were good in 20, if you want to count 2020. But again, it was a COVID year, and I think that affected everything, affected other teams, and I just don't know how much you can really take from that year. And I know some Iowa fans have gotten upset when I brought that up, but that's just a fact, and I'm not the only one who says that. It's a fact that the 2020 year was weird. Wisconsin was down, Minnesota was down, Michigan State was down, Penn State was down. I think it's hard to really measure Iowa's run game and offensive line success during 2020 because of those facts. Let's get to our next caller who's on hold here. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. It's Hawkeye Hangout. Who's on the line?
Hey, Corey, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I got two things going on here, but I got to turn it off here.
Okay.
How's that?
You're coming in loud and
this
clear.
Is Rob.
Rob?
Yeah, I've been a listener for a long time, and I finally got enough courage to give you a call.
You're the man, Rob. Appreciate you calling.
Yeah, I've been having some thoughts that going through my head, and all the things that you had to say, and the two people that keep on coming back to mind for me are, and I don't know if we can say his name or not. I don't want to get in trouble, but a certain former strength and conditioning coach, and
you can say his name.
another great human being, beautiful guy, in Norm Parker. And I tell you, it just everything that's going on, you wonder, where are those guys? And I know where they are. I know where they are, but they did so much for the program, and they brought such a great philosophy. I was at a strength and conditioning camp with my boys when he was still there, and he gave a talk about not being a bottom feeder, being brave enough to swim with the big fish. Hello?
Yeah, I'm listening.
I thought I lost you there for a second.
No, you're good.
But yeah. Anyway, just thinking of those guys, and I was at FanFest in the year after the Gator Bowl and heard Norm Parker talk. And I wish I could just tell you exactly what he said, but I'm gonna tell you what, he had the crowd spellbound. He really did, and the room was full. And but the one thing I just remember was, he goes, if you're gonna come to Iowa, he says, we want somebody that's not afraid to get in and fight, not afraid to stand up and he says, we're not playing tiddlywinks. He wasn't going to say we're going to brawl with you, but he said we're not going to run away from a battle either. And just had a real good philosophy.
And let me just say this. Let me add this in before you, and then let you go some more. But Norm Parker, he's one guy I regret not being able to meet because I've heard nothing but good things about him. And I think Iowa fans, although we do owe a lot of, in the last 23 years to Kirk Ferentz, we also owe a lot to Hayden Fry. We owe a lot to Phil Parker. But we owe a lot to Norm Parker because I don't know that Phil Parker would be the coach if it wasn't for Norm.
I got to tell you, Corey, I always kind of, and I'm not, please don't take this the wrong way. I always kind of get a smile across my face when I hear you say that you grew up with Kirk Ferentz, and I grew up with Fry. I don't remember any of the football coaches before Fry. I just know we were terrible. And that when the year that they beat Nebraska, it was just just such a stunner that they could do that, and that everybody was just so excited to think, hey, you know, something really interesting is going to start happening with the Iowa football program. And so, you know, and then I started taking my sons to the football games in Iowa City in like 2002 and 2003. And, you know, so that's another thing I was going to tell you, that this kind of reminds me of the seasons that we had Kyle McCann as quarterback. Was it Kyle McCann?
Yes, I believe
it was
right.
McCann, because when he was a senior, Brad was the backup, you know. I think he was a junior transfer, and man, everybody wanted Brad Banks to be playing quarterback, and it just wasn't happening. And you know, he would get to play a little bit. I mean, they were kind of trading off that year, and I think that was the year they went to the Alamo Bowl. They won that first Alamo Bowl. It was maybe his first bowl win. It actually, I think it was the season before they, you know, went that Orange Bowl season where Brad Banks was the main guy. And but yeah, it was that year before. It was frustrating. I think it was the Michigan game in Iowa City that they really should have beaten Michigan that year, but you know, they weren't letting Banks play. They were kind of letting McCann and him trade off, and yeah, I guess that's why we don't get paid the $4 million, right? So
well, I guess so. Now Brad Banks has said on the record that he was not ready in 2001. However,
really,
yeah, I don't, I can't speak on it because I was like 5 years old at the time. So, but he has said that though. Brad has said that he was not ready in 2001. Yeah. So, but again, it's when you bring up Brad Banks, I bring up what I brought up on a number of occasions, and that is I'm surprised to a large extent that after 20 years, I was never been able to even find a poor man's Brad Banks, because I mean the offensive success Iowa had in 2002 was such an outlier to what we've seen over 23 years of Kirk Ferentz's tenure, and it's just odd to me that Kirk Ferentz didn't buy into what happened in 2002 to a point where he'd make a concerted effort to find guys who play the quarterback position like Brad, and that is primarily the ability to be mobile and athletic guys, right? Instead of statuesque style quarterbacks.
Yeah, you know, scramble and then stop on a dime and put the ball where you want it. That when you say that, it makes me think of that 2002 year, that Iowa State game in Iowa City, which was a nightmare. But I'm going to be terrible because I'm being honest. What was the quarterback's name from Iowa State? Oh my God.
When? What are you talking about?
That year, played against Brad Banks, you know, and he, you know, the Hawks were winning like 24-7 at halftime, and then they came back and they beat us 33 to, I don't know what it was, but they just killed us in the second half. And then that was the year that we won the rest of the Big Ten games and went to the Orange Bowl, you know?
Seneca Wallace.
Yeah, thank you. Seneca Wallace. Yeah, he would, that night was so frustrating, man, because he would run 1,000 miles an hour and stop on a dime and just put the ball exactly where it needed to be for a first down, and they were just killing us that second half. Anyway, I'd like to talk with you more sometime, Corey.
All right, sir. Yeah, you're welcome to call anytime, including during our postgame shows.
Sure. And I would like to talk with Don. I went to high school with one of the walk-ons in Matt Rogers' team. So
okay. Remind me your name again.
Rob.
Okay, Rob. Well, I look forward to your call, and we'll be live with Coach Patterson. I'll be live after the game Saturday, and then we'll be live with Coach Patterson Sunday night.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll have the courage to call in.
Hey, I know he'd love to hear from you.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Rob. Thanks for the call, sir.
You bet.
Always good to hear from first-time callers, and appreciate your willingness to be on the air. I know it's uncomfortable for some people. Let's get to our next caller. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line? Hello? Hello, you're on the air. All right. While we're waiting to get to our next caller, we're going to remind everybody that you can become a premium subscriber by clicking the join button. Clicking the join button next to From the Hawkeye of the Storm here on YouTube to become a premium subscriber, and you'll get some perks. But most importantly, you're supporting the work done right here at From the Hawkeye of the Storm. If you enjoy the content throughout the week, including the live streams, the support is appreciated, necessary. And again, thank you so much to everybody who has subscribed. Michael Ortega, Kels Bells, Brian E., Gavin Miller, and Ryan Paul, our newest premium subscribers. Thank you, each and every one of you, for your support by means of being a premium subscriber. It is, again, very, very much appreciated. All right, we'll come back with our final segment in just a moment here during Hawkeye Hangout here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Your calls, and we'll kind of leave you with some parting thoughts as we get closer and closer to a big game in Columbus this Saturday. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. You may have heard of the real-life Hawkeye man cave known as Kinnick Under the Kitchen. Well, after lots of hard work, there's not much space left to paint, but the walls are exploding out for public consumption. Under the Kitchen is proud to announce that you can now purchase exclusive prints of some of your favorite Hawkeye legends, including wrestling great Spencer Lee, football players Arland Bruce, Riley Moss, and Tavian Banks, plus an all-in-one Murray family legacy print featuring Keegan, Chris, and Kenyon Murray himself. Signed and unsigned prints are available, making the perfect collectible or gift for any Hawkeye enthusiast. For more information on purchasing one of these outstanding Hawkeye prints, visit Under the Kitchen on Facebook. That's Under the Kitchen on Facebook. So appreciate Randy Engel and Under the Kitchen on Facebook. Check out his artwork. Great stuff down at his man cave in Mitchellville, Iowa. All right, let's get to our next caller who's on hold. Thank you for calling Hawkeye Hangout. Who's on the line?
Yeah, this is Arland Bruce III. How you doing this evening?
All right, Arland Bruce III. You gotta answer the $1 million question. People are doubting that you're really Arland Bruce III. You got to tell us: are you real? Are you fake?
Oh man, we talked last year. I told you a little bit about me last year. So
I know you did.
Man.
I believe you. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
November 23rd, 1977. You can Google me right now.
So I got to ask you, sir. I got to ask you. Arland has not been as involved these last few weeks. How does Iowa get him involved on Saturday?
Well, you know what? If you look at Brody Breck and Arland Bruce's resume in high school, they wrecked shop. They won a state title. Before Arland Bruce moved to Iowa, he played at Olathe North, where he won a State Player of the Year for Kansas and Missouri, the Simone Award, where he played quarterback, running back, punter, slot back, and receiver. So they need to look at his film and know that he can play all multiple positions. And he's like a McCaffrey or a Cooper Kupp, man. So I'm not just saying that for my son because he's my son, but it's the truth. I still play. I'm 45.
What does this offense need for to besides your son? What would you without trying to? I know you don't want to critique play calling and coaching. I know that's not going to do your son any good for you to do that. But what does this offense need on Sunday to have a chance to move the ball effectively?
Well, you know, they're all on scholarship, man. So you got to give praise and props to the kids for going to school and playing football. It's not professional football, but they are on scholarship, and they have to perform because if a receiver or running back fumbled the ball 2-3 times, he would probably get bent or, you know, get evaluated differently. They should do the same with every position. and take a chance and say, hey, you know what? Number 7, you're struggling a little bit. Let's put somebody in there that's going to kind of push and see what happens.
Does Arland have a good does your son have a good relationship with all of the quarterbacks? Is he closer to one of them?
Oh, I think he's an all-around athlete, man. He comes to work every day. He comes to school every day. And he just wants to help the team whatever he can do. He probably played tight end at the end. So he's a hard worker. He's been like that ever since he's been playing football since he was 7 years old. And he's a phenomenal person as a kid. And he's a better athlete. And he's going to get better and better. I think if they work on punt returns, they can get him a ball. But I think the running game is solid. The defense is phenomenal. I love watching the defense play. But it just looked like there's no rhythm on the offense. And somebody needs to say, oh, guys, let's just go deep these 3 plays in a row and see what happens. You know what I mean? Or come up with some climb routes. Or just come up with something creative for the offense where they're having fun and they're not upset that they can do better. So I'm looking forward to this Ohio State game. I think Iowa can win 23-17 because Ohio State is just a show team. They're a good team, don't get me wrong. But Iowa needs to do something because when USC and UCLA comes to the Big Ten, it's going to be serious. And Iowa needs a quarterback and a running back and a receiver and an O-line that can be well known in the Big Ten. The Big Ten is serious. I'm a Minnesota Gopher alumni, so I'm looking forward to playing for the Pig later in the season. The Big Ten, they might win 4 games later in the year. You never know. That's how the Big Ten is. And people just need to be patient, but the coaches need to push the players to compete for positions. That's how Glenn Mason coached us at the University of Minnesota, and that's how they should do it now, even though he's been there as long as he's been there. They need to do something where it makes the players feel good every day.
Arland, did you have a nickname in college?
In college, they call me AD23 because I wore number 23.
Okay. And can you, for people who aren't familiar with your career, can you kind of give people a rundown of your college and then your pro career?
Yeah, my college career, I was a freshman at Hutchinson Community College. I played running back. I was an All-American my freshman year. My sophomore year, I was a second-team All-American. And then I transferred to Minnesota with Glenn Mason because I was supposed to go to KU out of high school, but my grades weren't that great like my son. So I had to go to junior college, and I did pretty good in Glenn Mason. Left KU and went to Minnesota and recruited me all over again. And I ended up playing running back. But the running back did so well, I had to change positions, and I changed to slot back. And I said, whatever I got to do to get on the field, I'll change positions. And I did that, and I was successful at slot back. I made it was called the miraculous catch when Penn State was number 2 team in the country. I made that catch to beat the number 2 team in the country at Penn State. So I made history at Minnesota. We got the Pig my senior year. We went to a bowl game. So I remember those years. I want my son to be successful. I want Iowa to be successful because coach is a great coach. He's been there a lot of years. He knows a lot of great offensive and defensive plays that probably run through his mind every day. But and then I ended up going to the Kansas City Chiefs in 2000 as a free agent. I was on the team on the practice roster. I learned from great receivers like Andre Rison, Elvis Burbank, Warren Moon, Chester McLaughlin, Lou Bush. The list goes on and on. Back in 2000, that great team with Gunther Cunningham. So I left the NFL and went to Canada for 2 years and played in Winnipeg. Went to a Grey Cup, lost that. Stayed up there for a season. Tried out for 7 NFL teams. I'm not going to name all, but NFC and AFC. And then I also played for the 49ers in 2003. Started as kick return and punt return. I didn't have that much experience playing in the NFL and punt return until I got benched. Then I got better. And then I got benched because they didn't have confidence in me at punt return. So I went back to the CFL, won a Grey Cup in 2004. won a Grey Cup in 2011, and I got injured in 2014. And right now, I'm just rehabilitating. I've been rehabilitating the last 2-3 years up in Canada. I live in Canada, currently working in the movie industry in Vancouver. And I watch Iowa. I pay attention to everything. I love it. I love what you guys are doing. I wish I could wave at the kids. And good luck this season. And I just hope they make the players compete for a position to win games, because I don't want kids to get upset and say, you know what, I'm transferring here. It's not always great. Grass is not always greener on the other side and better. But some kids might get frustrated. I know my son might think he's doing well. He might consider KU, K-State, USC, Miami, or something like that. Or he might stay. You never know. So I would just wait till the season ends before anybody talks about the transfer portal, and let these young kids, these young men, earn their spots and compete for a bowl game now. That's what it's about. Can we get to a bowl game? That'd be great.
Yeah, no, I think you said is right, and all of these players, regardless. I mean, now with the era of the transfer portal, all these players every year have the opportunity to evaluate their situation at the end of the year, and that should only place more of the onus on the coaches to make sure that they're utilizing their talent the way the talent you should be utilized. And so I know you're not saying this, but I'll say it. I think your son needs to be more involved, and I don't know how you get him more involved, but that's not, and I'm not getting paid $1 million a year to do that, or $7 million a year to do that. So, I know I enjoy watching your son play as much as anybody else does, but kid's got to be more involved. And I appreciate hearing your perspective as a former player. They can't be
scared to play the young players. Kind of Kirk Ferentz needs to put their pride aside and let his young players play ball out there. If they can play, Brody Brett can play. Number 2 can play. I don't know his name. I'm sorry. The running back. I don't know what he said on Twitter, but okay, make him sit out maybe a series or a quarter, but don't just punish him and not let him play the whole year. That's tough on a young kid like that. You know what I mean? Because it'll make him frustrated and do something else to him. So I'm with Iowa. I hope they win 23-16 Saturday. I'll be watching.
And Arland, can you answer this one? And I'd love to have a conversation with you sometime off the air, but can I ask you this? What was it like playing for Glenn Mason? Because I know Glenn Mason as a commentator and as an analyst on Big Ten Network, and he just seems like just a happy guy. Is he really that way as a coach?
Oh, Glenn Mason is a wonderful person. Outside of football, I had the opportunity. Glenn Mason came to my house on a recruiting visit. He actually came and had dinner at my house to recruit me when I was in high school. And I got to know his family. I got to know his son real well. And I got to know him in Minnesota. He took care of me, made sure I had a place to live in the new dorms in Minnesota. Minneapolis is a big city, so, we lost touch, but Glenn Mason is he's a funny guy. He always told us, stop the run. And Glenn Mason is I'm glad he recruited me to go to KU, and I'm glad he recruited me to go play in the Big Ten. I got a lot of love for the Big Ten. I wish I could work in the Big Ten. And I'm looking forward to the Minnesota-Iowa game.
Well, Arland, I appreciate you calling in, and I think everything you said was fair. I don't think anything was overly critical. I think you have a lot of good points, and I think we're all in the same boat. We hope for a game on Saturday that's competitive, and the defense is going to do everything to make sure it is competitive. And so we'll see what your son can do in the rest of this offense. So I appreciate you calling in, and we'll chat again.
Man, keep doing what you're doing, man. You're doing a great show. I stop what I'm doing to watch you, man. So good job. I'm up here in Vancouver. I talk about you all the time. If you guys can check out the Rob Peterson show, that's a well-known sports channel. We can connect in the future if you like that to happen. And
do it.
Good
Absolutely.
job what you're doing.
I appreciate it, Arland. Thank you so much for calling in.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, enjoyed that call from Arland Bruce III. And anybody who doubted that was the real Arland Bruce, I told you that was the real Arland Bruce. And I don't think he said anything. Look, I see somebody in the chat that says, well, he better be careful what he says because, what happened with Noah Fant's uncle. He didn't say anything that's, in that phone call that was controversial. I mean, what is it? He wants his son to be more involved. I think it's clear that every skill position player on this team needs to be more involved, right? Right, in some way. And I'm talking about their best skill position players, as in Arland Bruce, Brody Brecht, Sam Laporta has been plenty involved. Luke Lachey is going to be involved plenty on Saturday, given his. I think I will make a concerted effort to get him involved, not only because of potentially some, I don't want to say weaknesses for Ohio State, but an opportunity to take advantage of tight ends. I understand where you're coming from with this comment, but I think everything that Arland had to say was perfectly fair. I would hope that Kirk Ferentz is not petty enough to limit Arland Bruce the fourth simply because his father called into a talk show. I think that's I wouldn't even go there. Let's hope that wouldn't ever happen. Let's get to our next caller here. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line? Okay, whatever that was, that probably signals it's time to end the show. Appreciate everybody being here, and thank you, Rick, for this comment, and everybody who's been here for the last 2 hours or so. It's much appreciated, and a reminder that I will be back. Actually, you know what? I did not want to skip our Super Chat. Burger, the Super Chat. Georgia gave up 41 points to Alabama in the SEC title game. Using John Buckeye's metrics, I guess Georgia's defense was not elite last year. Fair point. One game does not tell a story, especially when it's up against maybe the best offense in the country. Ryan says, will Spencer return for a COVID year? No. Now, he may transfer somewhere else, but my guess is that he'll hang it up and move on. Berger says, what does Kirk Ferentz's coaching tree look like at this point? Well, Phil Parker's been loyal. Norman Parker's been loyal. Do you give Kirk credit for those two guys? I don't know. I mean, you got to give him credit for putting those guys around him. But no, Kirk Ferentz does not have anything close to what Hayden Fry built here. There's no question about that. That's not even a discussion. Quick basketball question. What do you think of Andy Katz ranking Coach Fran number 9 in his best coaches at developing talent? Well, I do think Andy Katz knows what he's talking about. First of all, he's not one of those analysts that I think just throws stuff out there. He understands the game of college basketball. I do think Fran is probably one of the best developing coaches in the country. Now, again, I don't have a good feel for, all 300 some teams in Division I, but yeah, Fran is underrated in that regard. We talk about Kirk and this football program being a developmental program. Iowa basketball has been the epitome of development under Fran McCaffrey. I mean, look at Keegan Murray. Look at Luka Garza. Now, Luka Garza was a 4-star recruit. Keegan Murray didn't have any other. I think he had one other Division I offer from Western Illinois. The bottom line is Fran has. I mean, Aaron White's another good example. No, Fran deserves a lot of credit, and that's why you never know. And heading into this season, who's going to step up and be an All-American? I mean, perhaps they have another one in the wings. Could it be Chris Murray? Could it be Patrick McCaffrey or Tony Perkins? We'll just have to wait and see. And of course, more Iowa basketball content on the way, including Iowa postgame with Coach Gary Close. Sam says, I missed the last hour or so of the show as my question read that you saved earlier. Sam, I don't remember what your question was. You're welcome to repeat it in the chat, but I try to get to the questions as they're submitted. So I apologize if I missed it earlier. I do want to remind everybody that if you are interested in sponsoring the show, whether you're talking about this show, Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson, Iowa Postgame with Coach Gary Close, opportunities to grow your business or whatever you're looking to grow, from the eye of the storm at outlook.com. Shoot me an email from the eye of the storm at outlook.com. You can also donate to the channel by Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, by using the links in the description below. If you've not already done so, please subscribe. Hit that like button on your way out. That is much appreciated. It helps the channel, helps us in the algorithm. You can follow me on Twitter at From the Hawkeye on Twitter. Also search From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Facebook. Please share the show out on social media. If you're enjoying it, others will as well. To become a premium subscriber, click join next to From the Hawkeye of the Storm, the channel here on YouTube. And again, thank you to all of our new members. Appreciate all that support. And I think that's it. We'll be back on Saturday. I mean, content throughout the week. My picks are coming up within the next 24 to 36 hours. My picks for week 8 now? Unbelievable that the college football season flying by as it always does. And then on Saturday, I'll be back for Iowa postgame following Iowa at Ohio State, which is a big noon kickoff game on Fox, noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central Time. I'll be with you live, taking your calls, taking your chats, following the game right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Thank you, John. Appreciate the compliment for you being here. And we'll look forward to an entertaining game this coming Saturday. Sam, the question that maybe I missed earlier. Any chance Ohio State's wide receiver coach Brian Hartline would come here as OC with total control of the offense? He's a great recruiter, develops talent well, needs an overhaul on the offensive side. Boy, that's a great question. That's a great question. Would Brian Hartline ever consider coming here, making the jump from wide receivers coach to OC at Iowa? I guess if he was offered the job, it'd certainly have to be a consideration, because that is an upgrade to go from a position coach, a wide receiver coach at even at Ohio State to being a Big Ten OC. Absolutely, that's an upgrade. So I'd have to think he'd consider it. But would Iowa ever be willing to give total control to a guy who's never called plays? That's a question as well. Appreciate this, Ari Gold, for being here. Again, we'll be back in the coming days and back on Saturday following Iowa and Ohio State. Thank you to everybody who was here, including Arland Bruce III. Enjoyed our phone call with everybody this evening, and we will talk to you soon.